Stories from around the corner.
And around the country.
You're listening to All the Best.
Proudly supported by the Art Gallery of New South Wales.
You're listening to All the Best from FBI Radio 94.5. I'm Gabriella Acaria. This week, we're bringing you stories about a wetland brought back to life, the return of an extinct bug, and an ocean prayer. But before we get into this week's stories, I want to acknowledge that the environment I'm recording from is stolen and Gadigal land, and I pay my respect to Gadigal elders past and present, and also recognise that the area where FBI Radio is situated, Redfern, has long been a place of storytelling, strength, resistance and resilience for First Nations communities. We all have a connection to our environment, whether it's being a nature buff and hiking every weekend, or just by essence of living amongst it. One of my first memories of caring about the environment was attending the school strike for climate in 2019. It meant that we didn't go to school as a protest against the government. Bernie sees the environment as his sanctuary. This is a story about him caring about a previous industrial site in West Melbourne that was turned into an internationally protected wetland that allows local birds to thrive. This story was recorded and produced on the lands and near the waters of the Bunurong people.
From the top of the 100 Steps of Federation in the western suburbs of Melbourne, I can see a vast landscape of grasslands and wetlands spreading out to meet Port Phillip Bay. The Cheetham wetlands are part of this landscape, and while bird calls now penetrate the air, 35 years ago it was an industrial saltworks. It's still possible to see the outlines of the salt ponds and an old pump house within its 244-hectare boundary. In 1990 the saltworks was closed and the area rewilded. It's now an internationally protected habitat for over 100 species of birds. There are tall, elegant avocets and black-banded stilts that I see all year round. Greenshanks and red-necked stints fly from the Arctic over Asia to spend summers in this important feeding ground. Off-limits for most people, but for Dr Mike Weston, these wetlands are his living laboratory.
When you're out there in the wetlands, you feel like you're in a remote location. It's large enough to be completely absorbing and surround your senses, and it feels like somewhere far more remote.
Mike works for Deakin University, teaching wildlife and conservation biology, but beyond the theory, he conducts ongoing field research with his students on the behaviours of the beach-nesting red-capped plover, a small dainty shorebird that calls Cheetham wetlands home.
Habitat is shrinking, particularly wetland habitat, and therefore if birds are to survive, they're going to have to find these little islands of remnant habitat, and Cheetham wetlands is one of those islands of remnant habitat. It's highly productive, so it provides lots and lots of food to the birds that live there, and the life histories of some of those birds, migratory birds, they go through a part of their life where they need a lot of food in order to fuel their long distance migrations. There are birds that breed there, and those birds are relying on the breeding habitat being maintained in those areas as well.
When Cheetham Saltworks ceased production, the land was rezoned. Half the salt pond network became protected wetlands, the rest became sanctuary lakes, a prestige residential development. All the saltworks equipment was sold off.
I was the last site supervisor of Cheetham Saltworks when it closed down, and I wound up the company selling everything, what was there, like railway line, tram tracks, moving stock and everything to a restaurant called Choo Choo's.
Bernie McCarrick worked for Cheetham Salt for 10 years. He spent another 27 years as a park ranger with Parks Victoria before retiring in 2024. The transformation from a busy industrial site to a vast conservation area often surprised Bernie.
What I like most about Cheetham, it's like a remote locality. You could be walking somewhere, and if you don't look behind you and see the city, you don't know where you are, type thing.
When you say Cheetham Wetlands and Burnie are sort of one and the same in my mind, because I think that the status of those wetlands would be completely different without Burnie. I had come across Burnie informally as a visitor to Point Cook Coastal Park, but when I came as a researcher, what I found is that he lived up to his reputation.
As a park ranger, Bernie could be found outside, single-handedly managing the complex network of former salt ponds. He was passionate about protecting the wetlands and sharing his knowledge.
Bernie was incredibly supportive, incredibly welcoming, and very enabling to myself and the students that were working with me. And I can only tell you that through the course of 17 years, the amount and the types of support were just remarkable.
Bernie was indispensable at Parks Victoria. He was the only one who knew anything about the process of pumping and draining water through the connected salt ponds. He realised the importance of his vast knowledge of working in the wetlands.
86 ponds. Some of bottoms are lined with clay, some are mud, some are sand, some are water longer than the others. There's 240 entry exits within all that system. So it's pumping water. It was at 42,000 litres a minute. So I standardised a lot of it, or automated as far as what I could do.
So these ponds are not merely being filled up, they're being filled and dried, they're being monitored and then refilled and re-dried, and the water is moving around in specific ways, sometimes in channels that get blocked and the shovel has to come out and they have to be cleared, and all of that has to happen to maintain that productivity and that value for the birds.
We had to be careful that we didn't put too much water in some ponds because of the breeding bird, like the red-capped plovers. So the students, I used to give them a map and a manual of the Cheetham Saltworks, and they used to tell me where the nests were. They used to put a dot on everything where they were on the map, so I could avoid putting water through that. And so it's all about communication as well, I think.
One blustery spring morning, Bernie and I joined Mike and some of his students who were looking for red-capped plovers in the wetlands.
What our plan is today is we'll be searching the wetlands. It's a large place. It takes a long time. We do some of that by vehicle from the small number of tracks in here. And then once we've done that, we actually walk basically every pond wall in the place.
Are we seeing a special bird out there?
Red-capped plovers, and they've gone looking for them.
Oh, yes. So the students with Mike are off looking for the red-capped plovers, and we can see, how many can you see out there, Bernie?
I'm looking at
1, 2, 3,
6, about 7.
7, 8, and 8, 9.
Once I get rid of my fingers, I don't know how to count more than that. I suppose it tells you where it's dry and the mud flats drying type thing, they're foraging for food there. And it's pretty good. So when we pump water through that pond type thing, it'll go up to where the water might there, but we don't put any more. I can see some more over there now, the birds.
Yeah, wow.
I'll give Mike a call.
After more than 2 decades of Bernie's management of Cheetham wetlands, especially the water movement around the old salt ponds, it was important to capture and formalise his knowledge and expertise for the ongoing sustainable management of this important habitat.
They sat me down and they got everything out of my head and they put things into decision trees and everything. So they finished up with a hydrological manual and an ecological manual, and it's used at some places overseas now with salt water and everything.
It's a fabulous thing that we've captured a little fragment of Bernie's expertise in those wetlands in those manuals. The Cheetham system is remarkably complicated and complex, and without those manuals, no one other than Bernie could hope to keep that wetland going. It would change radically. I think that we forget that a lot of conservation wins stem from one fundamental thing, and that is to have a conservation champion. Conservation champions bring people along, they bring people together, and they genuinely and diligently care about what they're doing. And that is absolutely the case with Bernie. He has always loved those wetlands, and he's always worked in the best interests of those wetlands. And the rest is history, basically. I can do the gates if you want.
No, it's
all right. Okay, thank you.
The key fits.
Yes.
That
good.
one, not that
Oh,
one.
that one. Yeah, my key fits that one too.
And in summer we get all the algae on the top here.
Yes.
So me and Russell, we used to get the rakes and clear it out to let the water run.
Yep.
And one time I went over my gumboot, I got 2 fish out of it.
Did you?
Yeah, out of my gumboot, can you believe it? I thought, what a way to fish.
Cheetham is really, really special because it is only a handful of kilometres from a major city of some 4 million people, but it's extremely well managed and it's off limits to the general public, which is both a challenge, but for the birds it's a blessing because it means that they can live their lives in a fairly undisturbed manner and they can just, if you like, get on with it.
Cheetham wetlands may be off limits to the public, but Bernie's management of the pumps and water flows after the saltworks closed has created a perfect wetlands habitat. And Mike says this is what allows so many birds to thrive.
We can make sure that we're still pumping that water and clearing out those channels and opening and closing those gates so that the water levels go up, they go down, the insect life proliferate, the birds come to exploit that and have undisturbed feeding and resting environments.
You're listening to All the Best on FBI Radio 94.5. I'm Gabriella Acaria. That story was produced by Sandra Wilson. The supervising producer was Sarah Mashman. Because of these changes in the environment, insects are disappearing at an alarming rate. Some folks, like Ary Hoffman, are working to bring back the matchstick grasshopper.
We both just smiled a lot, I think. We just, we said, yay! There's a famous photo of us looking very tired, but also looking very happy about the fact that we've rediscovered them for the first time. And look, it's quite a revelation, very exciting, very rewarding. And of course, all of a sudden we thought, right, now we've got to save the species in Victoria, right? It's such a unique animal that it would be awful if we lost it, right?
This is Professor Ary Hoffman from Melbourne Uni. Ary was also appointed a Companion of the Order of Australia as his significant contribution to the science and education. He shows how excited he was back to the day he rediscovered the Keith's Matchstick grasshoppers in 2018.
It looks like a couple of sticks thrown together. So it's a flightless grasshopper. It doesn't have big wings or anything like that. Legs are obviously skilly as well, so they also look a bit matchsticky-like, if you like. Hence the name Matchstick grasshopper.
This $1 coin big grasshopper is quite different from others. It stays in a doll-like form in wintertime and serves as good food sources for animals to get through those harsh seasons. And it doesn't make any noise, unlike its relatives who survive in spring. But it just struggled with the habitat loss silently for around 50 years, until Ary and his team get it back.
There's a good article published in the 50s that said, well, these grasshoppers seem to be on the way out. They're obviously very much affected by agricultural conversion of the landscape. And I didn't find any in Victoria at all. So then Michael Carney and I decided to investigate the grasshoppers in more detail in Victoria, right?
These articles were published by Professor Michael White from Melbourne Uni and CSIRO scientist Dr Ken Key. Back to early 20th century, these two experts had already started their journey to find and study those Aussie-only grasshoppers. Professor White pointed that a number of these wingless grasshoppers had been heavily affected by the European settlement for more than 100 years. Now Ary explains how.
What the grasshopper needs, it needs sort of low vegetation, it needs a place to hide, and needs a place to feed. Now what livestock will do, they'll graze very closely. And when you graze very closely, of course, you get a mat of plants that is very, very low. And if you're a grasshopper sitting at a plant, you can't hide. So if a bird comes along or a mantid comes along or something else to eat you, then effectively it becomes very easy for them, and that also helps them go to extinction.
It was quite hard for Professor White and Dr. Key to find possible habitats as well. They didn't have any GPS or high technology, so they could only drive there and mark the spots by stopping there, reading the odometers, and writing it down.
By looking back at his diaries, we therefore found some likely spots. So without that knowledge of the biodiversity in the past, we could have been looking for a very, very long time.
People hadn't seen this species since 1967 in Victoria. The last place this grasshopper appeared, recorded in its notes, was in cemeteries.
The cemeteries is an interesting situation because cemeteries are generally fenced off, right? People don't like livestock going through cemeteries. And that allows the native vegetation to hang around, right, that these grasshoppers need, right?
Ary and his team visited around 25 cemeteries in Victoria, New South Wales, and Australian Capital Territory. They found this species in the other two states, but none in Victoria. The areas where it used to occur were no longer housing these grasshoppers.
We thought, well, maybe they might be totally locally extinct in Victoria. And we looked at quite a few sites, we didn't find them, but then we eventually ended up in Omeo.
Omeo is a small town in East Gippsland. It was also recorded in those old notes. Ary and his team went there with a very clear goal, is to find the grasshopper's host plant, some native daisies.
So we're driving along the road, we spotted the daisies, we stopped, got out of the car, looked at this daisy patch, and there they were. Right on the side of the road, we rediscovered these grasshoppers in this patch of daisies, just outside of Omeo.
The first thing Ary's team did after the discovery was to use a tool called putter to translocate those tiny insects.
So we're taking the grasshopper from one area where they're quite abundant, and then we're moving them to another area where the vegetation is right.
Up to now, the key Matchstick grasshopper is on the endangered list in Victoria. Ary and his team has the ambition to remove it from the list. He wrote in his news article, quote, "The resurrection of Keith's Matchstick grasshopper has the potential to become one of Australia's greatest conservation success stories." End quote.
So successful conservation means you've got a series of populations for the long term to allow the species to actually persist. That becomes a model system that you can also apply to other insects. And again, translocations may be a good way to do that. We're all about thinking about the future, and it's active conservation these days.
You're listening to All the Best, proudly sponsored by the Art Gallery of New South Wales on FBI Radio 94.5. I'm Gabriella Accaria. That story was produced by JJ Tang, who was our intern at All the Best last year. It was originally made as part of a collaboration between All the Best and the University of Melbourne. The supervising producer was Thomas Phillips, and a special thanks to Louisa Lim. For the last year, a harmful algal bloom, whipped up by a marine heatwave and shift in ocean currents, has been devastating coastlines across South Australia. More than 750 marine species have been affected. Renate, who lives on South Australia's mid-coast, shares a poem about what it's like to witness this profound imbalance in the oceans washing ashore.
Well, I called it Water Trial Algal Bloom. Water Trial Algal Bloom, because it's a water trial for us. it's impacting the water. It's impacting our waters. So, anyway, here we go. Got some bubbles. Slow, slow sinking down, ocean death, deathbed. Fall, fall, they all fall down, slack, collapsed, deflated, eyes wide with death, shrunken, sunken, silenced. Oh, so many sea creatures perishing. I am gutted, snared, hooked by their demise. Crab-like I cringe. Heart sink, dredged, trawled, tangled in knots. This unholy horror I honour. I stalk the Aldinga shoreline where the wind whips my face. The pallor of the sea is seedy. Filmy waves hoist heavily. Foam seeps into seaweed clumps frothing. Blue-finned fish grey the ground. The response mob pincer them into buckets, while Kuan Yin stands sentinel above Selix, her vessel of divine nectar arrested, white garments billowing, stiff. But I muse on Sedna, ocean goddess, Inuit maiden, who dwells profound fathoms deep, abandoned, wounded, betrayed, naked, cold, enraged. Her father fled on the surface after his cowardly attack. Her dismembered fingers birth fishes, seals, dolphins, walrus, and whales. She nets all hurts, all fear, all trauma. So do not shirk. Hers is the touch of death. Sink, sink, engulfed in her body, eyes wide and wild. Muse, meditate, marinate. Muse, feel, flow, fill with whale song breaching, body resounding. Shell, cochlea, drum, shamanic healing heart singing. Stroke her face, cradle her head, comb her tangled tresses. Release the refuse of centuries, cultures that kill without consequence, without ceremony. Through the grapevine, over the scarp, into the scrub. Lean into deep listening, linking arms, lighting lanterns. Understand that we are all interconnected. All of creation, everything crafted with care, quantum, fractal, numinous web of life woven. In every breath we share, in every drop we drink. in everything animate and inanimate, they are sentient and are sensing our kindness, our kinship, our cherishing.
You're listening to All the Best on FBI Radio 94.5. I'm Gabriella Accaria. That story was written and read by Renate Milonig and recorded by Mel Bakewell. If you love audio stories, then keep listening to All the Best for unique stories from independent audio makers from so-called Sydney and around the country. Definitely catch our live radio broadcasts on Sundays at 9:30am on FBI Radio 94.5. We also release a brand new episode every Tuesday at 4pm on allthebestradio.com, Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Follow us now so you never miss an episode. All the Best is made at FBI Radio on Gadigal land in association with SYN and 3RRR on Wurundjeri Woiwurrung and Bunwurrung lands and ACCC on Arrente and Warramungu lands. The All the Best executive producer is Mel Bakewell. Katerina Fraga Matos is our events and partnerships coordinator. Kwame Slusher is our production manager. Patrick McKenzie is our community coordinator. And a special shout out to all the volunteers who helped to make All the Best possible. Shining Bird composed our theme music, and Annie Hamilton designed the artwork. We're heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network, and were made possible by the Art Gallery of New South Wales and the Community Broadcasting Foundation. You can find our full archive of almost 700 episodes at allthebestradio.com. I'm Gabriella Accaria. Thanks for listening.